Sweet spirit, take over this place, take over this place. Sweet spirit, take over this place, take over this place. Holy Spirit, take over this place, take over this place. Holy Spirit, take over this place, take over this place. Mighty Spirit, take over this place, take over this place. Mighty Spirit, take over this place, take over this place. Take over, take over, take over, take over this place. Take over, take over, take over, take over this place.
Thank you so much, Margo. I want to introduce our guest speaker today. It's kind of serendipitous how I found her. I was looking around online, I saw a video of hers, and I said, wow, she'd make a great guest speaker. And later I discovered that she's an associate minister for the church that my mentor is the senior minister for. So it was a great connection. It's the Unity community of Central Oregon, which is based out of Bend. But we're so glad to have you today. And I'll just say that Robyn Ryan, in addition to being the associate minister for Unity Community of Central Oregon, is a master NLP practitioner. She is passionate about prayer and facilitating personal transformation. She oversees Unity's prayer ministry and pastoral counseling team. And her other passion is horses. So we are so glad to have you here. And I'm going to spotlight you, Reverend Robyn.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure to be asked. And I'm speaking on one of my favorite topics, because in spirituality, we love to focus on how to be more spiritual, and we take our spirituality seriously, don't we? And it was so interesting to me that that was even in the writings of Michael Beckwith just a few moments ago. You know what we don't think about, I think, enough, and that's joy. How can we be in joy? How can we expand our awareness of joy? I think most of you have seen TV shows or movies where there's an angel on someone's shoulder and there's a devil on the other shoulder, and they're arguing with each other. And the angel is saying something like, oh, you don't need that piece of pie, you know, you're watching your weight. And the devil goes, oh, but you deserve it. You should have that one more piece of pie. And they argue with each other. And how we rise up above those momentary arguments that we have with ourselves all the time speaks a lot about how we feel about joy. I bet you never thought of that. For example, how often have you been in joy about anything, and then someone calls you and says, oh, well, you know, my daughter is in surgery or whatever, and then you feel guilty for joy. Have you ever been there where you felt guilty to feel good when you knew someone else wasn't? And that can get us caught up. This is a cultural thing that I think for our US culture, that we feel bad about feeling good sometimes. And is that where you want to live? Think about that. I know empathy is important to all of us, is being empathetic. And what does that mean? But walking in someone else's shoes. And so when we're working with people that are going through a bad state, empathy doesn't mean going into their bad state. For example, if they're sick, empathy doesn't mean, okay, now I have to join them and be sick, does it? But somehow we think that if they're not feeling good, we should join them in that. And I'm here to invite you to look at that kind of in a fresh way. Think about joy for a minute on a scale of 1 to 10. If 0 is no joy and 10 is joy so great that you vibrate right off the planet, consider for a moment, where is your default of joy? Where do you live in your day-to-day activities when you're not thinking great thoughts and bad thoughts, you're just carrying on and doing what you do for the day? Where is your joy quotient? And I looked at that a long time ago and went, I got to work on that because, I think I'm kind of like a 4 and I would like to be more. And then over time, I worked at it and every now and again, I would look at it and go, okay, where's my joy quotient? Ooh, I think I'm up to a 4.5, but I still have a long ways to go. And I would look at the things that would steal my joy. For example, oh, life is going good. And then I got an email that was distressing to me about a friend. And oh, my joy went away. And I thought, wait a minute. Am I so quick to give it away? Am I so quick to feel bad about feeling good? So this is, I believe, such a beautiful area that we can meditate on how we can be in joy and still be empathetic with others. We can be in joy and still navigate problems in our life. How many times have you been in joy and then you feel a pang for being happy when someone else isn't? Or we actually, this is my favorite. Now that you already know that I used to fly airplanes, one of the things that we used to do before we went into all the electronics is we used to keep a physical paper logbook, and we would write in our departure airport, our arrival airport, time en route, who was flying, and so forth. And as I was training for the job and they were teaching me how to do that as a co-pilot, I would write all the information in, and I wrote the destination airport while we were en route. And the captain said, don't do that. And I said, well, why not? We're going to Seattle. I just wrote Seattle in here. He says, yeah, but we're not there yet. And I asked him, well, why not? And he looked to me, he says, well, I don't want to stack the deck in favor of us not getting there, which is a deep belief in Murphy's Law. How many of us live there on a regular basis that we're not paying attention to? And so for years, I dutifully did not write in the destination because, we didn't want to invite Murphy's Law to not get us to Seattle and end up at our alternative Boeing Field or wherever. And then finally, I woke up to that and went, is that really how I want to play this game? And so I started writing in the destination. And the captains look at me and go, you wrote the destination? I go, yes, I did. And you know what? If we don't make it to Seattle, I think I'm capable of drawing a line through Seattle and writing in Boeing Field if the weather was bad or so forth. And you could see kind of the relief in their eyes of, oh, yeah, I guess. And the freedom from our inherent belief in Murphy's Law, because we truly have a deeper belief that we are controlling our environment based on how we think and feel with Murphy's Law, don't we? But boy, that can get in your way of enjoying life. And it certainly can get in your way of enjoying joy, because it almost leads one to be afraid of being in too much joy. Therefore, it'll hurt too much. Have you ever been there? I remember when I was a kid and I was in the doctor's office with my mother, and she was kind of had her hand on me, and I don't remember what they were doing, looking at something. And without telling me, they gave me a shot. And I was a happy little kid just sitting there, you know. I remember enjoying all the attention I was getting from the doctor and the nurse, and my mom was, you know, holding me there. And so I'm happy, and all of a sudden, and it made me really jump. And after that, I noticed that rather than staying in joy, I was sort of always ready. And so I lowered my joy quotient so I could be ready for pain. How many times do you do that in everyday life? And how limiting is that? That's a really, you know, we should want more joy, not less, right? So one of the things that my goal is, now I never wanted to be like a Jesus or a Buddha or anything and be so enlightened that I feel like it could almost vibrate off the planet. That's never been my goal. My goal is to live all of life and soak up everything there is to soak up, and make all the mistakes and experience life to the fullest. So my goal is not to enjoy 24/7. Sounds kind of silly, doesn't it? But I guess I just like experience and all. But I looked at, what is my goal? If my goal is not to be in joy all the time, what is it? And I realized quite beautifully, my goal is to be that blow up bowling pin that you give children. Have you ever seen those? They're very tall and they're blow up, and they have a weight on the bottom, and you punch them and the bowling pin goes whoa, 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 and it finally comes back to center. My goal as life punches me is to go through my emotions and experience it all, and hopefully gain some wisdom out of it. My goal is to come back to center as quickly as possible. And I gauge, I call it a psychic pop quiz, cosmic pop quiz of how am I doing? And oh, that one really knocked me, but boy, I got back pretty fast. I'm happy with that. So how do you look at your joy? And how do we expand our joy? And when we look at what joy does, the old style 50s of how I was raised, and probably how many of you were raised, is that the louder a parent yelled at you, the stronger the lesson and the deeper it would sink in. And whereas that was certainly sometimes true, they also felt like the deeper the punishment, the more the kid felt bad, the more this would sink in. And we're coming to a more enlightened way of teaching our children now through empathy and understanding and all that. But it works for joy too, of rather needing to feel bad on a situation. How can we feel good to expand instead of feeling bad to expand? Now, I was trained not through Unity. I was trained through Centers for Spiritual Living and Science and Bind. And what I love about the specific teaching of prayer in Science of Mind is it's a 5-step. And the first step is God is getting into the awareness of the magnificence, the size of God, and then recognizing that I am one with that power. And then the next one is I accept whatever I'm praying for, and then thank you and goodbye. That's the way we teach children, and it's much easier to remember. And when we would go into prayer, actually, when our church was small, we used to have sharing, and people would stand up and they would share what they wanted prayer for, and then we would pray for those people. And when someone would stand up and have something, quote, really bad, like, I just got diagnosed with cancer, and you could hear in the room the collective sigh of, oh no, that's awful. And then we would pray, and I thought, I don't like that. I don't like that, because it led people to immediate compassion and feeling bad for that person. And then we go into prayer. Well, when you feel bad for someone, let's look at energy for let's give emotions an energy number. If anger and rage is a 1 and joy is a 10, where would you put grief? Like maybe a 4? And compassion, still fairly low because there's some grief in it. If you need to feel compassion, maybe a 5. And the reason that I felt so strongly about this is because if we are praying for someone, if you could see energetically what we were doing, if energy had colors and we were sending that energy, if we're in a place of compassion and feeling bad, we're sending that energy to that person. Now, I don't know about you, but when I look at it like that, I think, do I want to send them a 4? Or especially if they're going through pain and they're going through hard times, I want to send them a 10. Well, the only way I can send them a 10 is if I go there first. And so that's one of the things I love about this type of prayer. And I saw it in yours too, on remembering the magnificence and the breadth and depth of this energy that we often call God. And I will stay in that step of the prayer as long as it takes for me to step out of my human emotions, my human form, and the part of me that remembers all the problems and how that thing broke and I have to fix it somehow. And oh yeah, that other bill came in. I need to stay in prayer until all that falls away and I remember the truth, the capital T truth. And that's what I believe we need to do with joy, is we need to expand our awareness. So just take a moment, just for a moment, and consider going into joy. Just close your eyes just for a moment and say, okay, I'm going to be in joy. What does the little voice in your head say about that? Is there any yeah buts in that? Because that's an important piece to know about how your little voice works, your mind works, and where you can get stuck in recognizing that your joy quotient isn't maybe as big as you might like. One of the things we all talk about is, what is your pain tolerance? And many of us, especially later in life, we've had experience with pain. And so we'll say, oh yeah, I've got a pretty high pain tolerance. I can handle pain really well. How many of you have worked on your joy tolerance? And I've been in joy, and I've in meditation and prayer, and I've gotten to this place of joy, and I go, wow, I love it. And then I'll notice, oh, what's that over there? And I literally, my nervous system says, in hindsight, I look at it and go, my nervous system says, okay, that's all the joy I can handle for right now. I have to kind of calm down. Well, you know what? I think that's a great muscle that we can all work and expand so we can be in greater joy. And as we're expanding on that, then we can take our joy into empathy and compassion. And we can weave joy into our energy when we're working with other people. Because isn't that what you would love to give to someone else? Is joy. We really, really, I think, would enjoy our life so much more if we spent more time meditating on joy. One of the favorite stories, I worked with a flight attendant who she had these big, beautiful doe eyes that I just thought were beautiful. And somehow we were talking about customer service. And she said, oh, I had this customer one time. He came on board and he had too many carry-ons. And I said, sir, you can't have all these carry-ons. And she says, you're going to have to check one of the bags. And he said, do you know who I am? And she gave me her big doe eyes. Like, she says, this is what I did with the customer, and said, oh, I am so sorry, sir. She turned to the man settling beside him and said, do you know who this man is? He doesn't know who he is. Oh, this poor soul. And of course, the man said nothing. You know, she put him in his place quite nicely as she kindly grabbed his bag and checked it. And she said every time during the flight she served him, she gave him the sad eyes. How often do we do that when we're dealing with people who we know are going through tough times? And I not be belittling the compassion and the sad eyes, because in my map of the world, we have to start with meeting them where they are. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we start with the eyes of compassion, and then we grow the joy with the inner silent invitation of inviting them to join us? Because who needs joy more than people who are going through tough moments? So what a beautiful thing to share with everyone. My final thought is when I work with parents of children who are growing up and they're letting go of they're snipping the apron strings, and I tell them, your goal is no longer to guide and direct your child. Your goal is no longer to tell them what they're doing wrong. Your goal is to be their cheerleader, because the world is going to tell them what they're doing wrong constantly. And so your job is to now be the everlasting joy cheerleader, so that they can take all the foundation of all that you taught them over the years, and they can take their wisdom that they're gaining, and they can use joy to come up with a really inspired decision. And isn't that where we all want to go? So I invite you to take that angel and the devil and have fun with them. They really are fun. You don't have to kick them away, because we all have them, whether we like them or not. But we can certainly invite them to play more in joy. Look at how can you enjoy life more and pass it on, because that is the gift that does keep on giving. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Reverend Robyn. I was just thinking about what you were talking about. It's certainly an interesting perspective. And I was thinking about, before I think about compassion, I think about empathy. Before I think about that, I think about sympathy. And I watched a YouTube video the other day about sympathy, and they had someone ring a bell next to a bunch of other bells, right? And if they rang the bell that had the note C in it, it would find the other note that had C in it, and they would both vibrate together. So that's literally what sympathy means. You are taking the vibration of the other person and vibrating where they are. And I think perhaps what you're saying is hold your high vibration. Being in joy doesn't mean you have to make jokes. Being in joy doesn't mean you have to be, being in joy to me is this permanent state. And someone who exemplifies that to me is Reverend Jane, my mentor.
Yes.
Even when she is in a moment where someone might be telling them of a bad time that's happening right now, that doesn't knock her off of her joy. So I really love that. And I think it goes along with what David Alt said about being grateful for it all. Make sure to be grateful for it all, meaning life, meaning it all. So thank you for your perspective today. So normally during this time, we have community prayer, but today I wanted to let everyone know that Myrtle Hawkins made her transition on Wednesday. And she actually, the last thing that she saw was our service on Sunday. And then a few hours later, she lost consciousness. And she was in the ICU for a few days. You may or may not know that she was struggling with cancer recently after having overcome cancer. She was 98 years old, and she was surrounded when they took her off of life support on Wednesday. She was surrounded by Debbie, her daughter, who some of you know, by Lindsay, her granddaughter, and by Glenn, her grandson, who was her caregiver for many of her later years. I just wanted to honor and be in celebration of all that Myrtle was. She was a prayer chaplain at Unity. She attended Unity. I think she attended Unity for 50 some years. I have some voice messages from her where she's telling me all about herself. And we used to talk every once in a while. It fascinated me that she was legally blind, but she didn't let that slow her down. She was so tenacious, and gosh, just a few services ago, she got out there and told everybody, okay, I'm dealing with cancer, but I've got purpose. She wants to get back to the piano, playing piano with her son, Glenn, or her grandson, Glenn. So what a wonderful lady. And I know this is a little bit blurry, but there's a 2-minute video that she did for Heart of the Valley that I would like to share. I'm gonna share my screen and then share this video. And this is her being interviewed 8 years ago.
I'm Myrtle Hawkins. I'm proud to be 91 and self-sufficient as far as taking care of myself, and I hope to be of service to others. There's never been a time that I was not taking a class, even now. Right now, I'm enrolled in water aerobics. I'm 20 years older than the oldest person in that pool. Gee, the time goes by fast. For 40 years, I was a professional artist and had my studio, and I painted portraits of people and animals. As far as painting animals from life, I have never met anyone that does that. I guess I'm unusual. I started out with pretty sad childhood. Through high school, I had a steel leather covered brace, full body, and could never pick anything up from the floor. And all through high school, I was in the square box, and kids, I didn't have any friends. So when I was age 22, I got to take that brace off, and that was one of the happiest days of my life. It was so hard for me to ask for help. So I've been so appreciative to the Heart of the Valley. I've made wonderful friends there that I feel like I have a kinship with them. And I just can't say enough thank yous to Heart of the Valley. And to think how it would have been without them would have been pretty bleak. And I'll always be grateful.
Thank you for watching that with me. Yeah, it's, the video, high def video wasn't exactly a thing in those days. But I'm so glad that it's there. And Heart of the Valley is an organization that we partner with that brings services to seniors in the Valley. So we realize how important that is. So at this time, I'd just like us to think about Myrtle and just know that she's watching this service today. And Myrtle, we can see you now. We carry you in our hearts. And we will carry the inspiration that you were. And when we lose faith or lose motivation or lose joy, we will remember that you always carried these things. That's the energy of who you were. Not letting anything stop you. Not letting anything stop you. So we love you. You are a blessing. And I believe that your soul has a purpose that carries on. It's carrying on in this moment with deep gratitude for all that you are and all that you continue to be. We are blessed, and you are blessed, and so it is.